Here's our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about the experience, some about selling, and some about the things that we think you should do to make it into a career, not just a hobby. As I said earlier, Kelly O'Neill is working with me on this. She's a metal artist and a marketing professional. I'm an art lover, tinkerer, and event designer, I guess would be the way I'd describe myself. Kelly, do you want to do anything more on the introduction?
That's great, Mark. Thanks. I look forward to having a great discussion with everybody.
Cool. And we want this to be as interactive as possible, though in order to get through a lot of stuff, it'll turn out that Kelly and I are sharing more than our fair share. So this is 3 parts of the show. Once you've got started, there's the setup day, there's the show days, and then there's after the show. You'll see there's a word bonus in the upper right corner. What we've been doing is putting a lot of the resources into this slideshow, and then I can share those with you and send you the whole slideshow. We just ask that you complete the survey that will give you the link for before getting the information, because that way we get the information we need. So key to being ready for setup day, read your information sheets. Now, Larry, what percentage of shows actually send out information sheets? Do most of them or all of them do it? You're on mute.
What do you mean by information sheets?
Well, just basically a sheet about where to show up, when to get there, hotels, all that type of stuff.
Some of that stuff every show sends out. Some of it only a few send out, like hotel information, unless the show has reserved a book of rooms.
Yep.
which then goes very fast.
Sure. So basically, this is all the stuff that you need to do before the shows and to check out the rules that you may not have noticed. For example, if you're required to have insurance and you click on that or the word bonus, it'll tell you some more about the different types of insurance available for artists.
Yeah. You know, the insurance is new. It's only been in the last 3 years.
Yep. And then permits. Some cities require that every vendor has a permit. A lot of art fairs go ahead and pay in that permit fee and you'll never even know that it happened. Sometimes you need to make parking arrangements or hotel information. All of that, it's best to do weeks before the show, if at all possible. Okay, depending on how tight the show is in terms of space, they'll either send you a very specific check-in time or a very general check-in time. They might just say, okay, come between 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Friday. And when you get to the check-in, you'll get some guidance. Most shows are given booth signs and badges. Some of them also have trinkets. But this is the time to make sure you understand where the restrooms are, if there's any special food arrangements, where you're supposed to park. A lot of shows have an artist lounge where you can relax if you could get away. That's the time to figure those things out. And you want to be prompt. If there's a specific sign that's assigned to you and it doesn't seem like it's going to work, call the show and get it changed. Otherwise, you got to show up at that time, because otherwise it's likely to be challenging. For example, at the Ann Arbor Art Fair Original, my wife and I do a fundraising booth there. And if we show up before 7 p.m., it closes off the road for everybody. So we need to know that. And the same thing, if an artist shows up after 7 p.m. on that day, we're going to end up blocking them a little bit. So pay attention to your time. Good neighbors. Unload, move the vehicle, and then set up. Why? Because virtually every show will end up getting blocked if more than a few artists are unloading at the same time. I put that little tarps there because I'm suggesting you bring tarps and have them available so that if it's raining, you can put a tarp on the ground and then wrap your things with the tarp. Another thing a lot of people like to do is they'll unload their tent and their sidewalls and whatever other structural elements on the check-in day, and then wait until the next day when the show opens to bring in out their art. Sometimes, especially if it's raining, that's the better way to do it. Try not to park in front of somebody's booth. You're not going to have a choice sometimes. And be patient. We're in this together. We all get stressed. If somebody starts getting stressed and angry, just remember they're probably worried about it like you are. For a lot of the people out there, this is their livelihood. And it's not surprising that, if they're inclined to stress, they're going to show it then. These are some things that you want to bring: snacks, water, sunscreen, and a chair. Kelly, do you want to talk a little bit about where to sit?
Can I say something, Mark?
Sure. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, if and some people, and I know I did, is I restocked inventory from my vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I would, if it was a major show, like the original Ann Arbor Street Fair, the year I got into it, I went there 2 months ahead of time, and I bought a parking space in a driveway a half a block away from my spot.
Brilliant.
And then just dollied my stuff in, and I was able to go for inventory throughout the show.
Sure. Thank you, Larry. So Kelly, are you one of the types that likes to sit outside the booth, inside the booth, at the back of the booth?
Well, Mark, it kind of depends on how the promoter has set it up, but I want to make sure that wherever I sit, I have access to the customers coming in. I don't want to have to put a table between me and the customer, because I think it's important that you have an opportunity to have a conversation with someone that wants to have a conversation with you. Of course, with COVID regulations, it might be a little different,
Sure.
Staying 6 feet apart. So maybe this year we stay behind the tables. I don't know, but I like to make sure that wherever I'm sitting, I have good access to the customer who's in my booth, and that they have a good line sight to me. So they don't want to look around and not be able to find me, because part of the reason of shopping for art in an art fair is to have that engagement with the artist.
Yep. There's a number of artists that choose to sit outside their booth on the other side of the aisle. And I find sometimes it's hard to find them, but they feel that it is less intrusive. They feel that people maybe are more likely to go into the booth if there's not somebody that right there. So you'll have to figure out for yourselves what works.
Yeah, you don't want to be on top of the customer. You have to give them space to browse, but you don't want to be too far away that they can't find you. So honestly, it just depends on your setup and the way that the promoter has placed you. So
If you sit in your booth, don't read a book or play on your phone.
Heck no, which kind of gets us to the show days. Get yourself oriented. Are there booth sitters, which are people that are often volunteers that will come and stay in your booth for half an hour so you can go get lunch? Or can your neighbor cover for you? That's important too. Meet that neighbor, make friends. Offer first. I like that. You go to your neighbor at the booth and you say, hey, if you need to get away for a while, let me know. I'd be happy to keep an eye on your spot. Kelly, you told me you always exchange cards because that way you're less likely to forget the name.
I have to admit, I regularly will introduce myself, and 30 seconds later, I can't remember the person's name. So it could be the stress of the morning or the afternoon, but I do try to grab a card. So especially because later in that afternoon, I'm going to want to talk to them, and I want to be able to use their name when I address them.
Sure. And then walk the show if you have time, compare some prices and quality. Also get a feel for, are there some booth spaces that are better or worse? You'll want to know that in case you're going back to that show. So you can, even if they don't ask you, you could still suggest that you'd like a specific area. Lots of networking. And this is one of my pet peeves, the art on the ground. When you put your paintings, especially on the ground, I believe you cut the value in half or worse, because nobody puts really nice, good quality art on the ground, unless of course it's a sculpture that belongs on the ground. So be ready 30 minutes earlier, because some great buyers, going back a few years, a lot of people believed that if you didn't get there first, you wouldn't get a chance to get the best art. That was the days when there were very few art fairs, and there were people that would sell out in the first couple of hours. Still, some good buyers might come early. So if you're ready, you might get that sale. Be ready. There's going to be kids and pets. And the challenge is, if you are not kind and helpful to the kids and pets, you're likely to alienate the shoppers, the buyers, the parents.
Mark, I think that
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just going to say that when you're setting up your booth, know that you will have kids and pets in your booth. So another reason not to put the art on the ground is the dog may urinate on your art, right? The kids are going to grab. So don't put anything fragile at the eye level of a toddler. So these are things that you might not think about if you don't have children yourself.
Yeah. And another thing that happens frequently is people's, especially after COVID, find each other after not seeing each other for months. And 7 people suddenly are standing in front of your booth having a conversation, and nobody else can see you. So you gotta kind of figure out how to help people understand they need to move along. Cards and info signs. It used to be,
Mark, I would, it'd be interesting to hear from some of the experienced artists how they do get those groups to move along without being rude about it. I mean, I usually will just approach them and ask if they've had a chance to see my work, and that's usually enough to get them to move. But if anyone else has any other clever ways, I'd be interested in hearing it.
Move your art around.
Mhm.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So that you're actually moving into their space to rearrange things.
That's even better. Very subtle, but effective.
That's cool. So back in the old days, everybody had business cards of one sort or another. And a hint for business cards is you want to make sure if somebody picks up your card that it's obvious who you are and how to get in touch with you. So spend extra if you're going to get business cards, and make sure you have some art on it, or at least some words that explain it. Now, more than ever, people are just putting up a sign and saying, hey, take a photo of my sign, or a QR code and saying, hey, take a picture of the QR code. That way you don't have all those cards wandering around. Why do people ask for cards? One of the reasons, if I'm at a show and you're busy, I'm going to see if I can get a card without disturbing you so that I can contact you after the show and tell you about other opportunities. So if you want that and you don't have a card or a way for me to contact you, I can't do it unless I bother you.
Yeah,
Another
right.
reason that people will have a card is that they like your art, they want something to show it, but they don't want to spend any money.
Is everybody familiar with moo.com?
Yep.
That's who I get my business cards from.
Mhm.
Moo.com.
Yeah, the front looks normal, but they'll print your art on the back of the cards at no extra charge.
Nice.
It's a cool place.
So
Put your booth number on your card.
Yeah, write it on there, especially early in the show so people know where to come back.
What's the company's name? For this?
moo, it's the noise that a cow makes. M-O-O.
Okay, thank
Here,
you.
I'll type it in the chat.
Oh, great. Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
Sure. So this is another thing that Kelly thought was important. Know your budget early on. You might be thinking you're going to be eating a $5 meal twice a day, and it turns out that there's nothing short of a $20 meal. So you want to kind of figure out how much money you're willing to spend, how much you're going to allocate towards art and so forth. And once you have that budget, you can screw it up and overspend or underspend. But if you never have the budget, you're not as conscious about where that money's going, I believe.
It's funny, Mark, I'm lucky enough to have my husband help me. And I always tell him that he can't have lunch and until we sell something.
Yeah. Now, there was the one time that he went 3 days with no lunch, but what are you gonna do? Okay, so Antoinette's asking about guest books, and this is an important thing. Keeping track of people's information. We're gonna get to that in just a moment. The other types of notes you'll wanna do, for every show, you wanna write down your sales and the sales pattern too, so you'll know, hey, this is a city that starts late, or a city that they're right there ready for you at the beginning. You want to make a note where your booth was so that later on, when you get a booth assignment, you can see if it's similar or if it's problematic. And this one, Kelly, you want to talk about the unusual transactions, collector's clues?
Oh, absolutely. I keep a journal for every show, just handwritten journal. And I write down anything memorable about a person that I have a decent conversation with, or a person that I sell something to. And you have repeat buyers the next year. So for example, if you're going to the same city year after year, there's going to be 20% of those customers coming back every year. And if you can recall them, you review it the day before the show and you can recall their name, or if they're a Tigers fan, or they have a pet chow, or anything that demonstrates that you paid attention to that conversation. That's how you build repeat buyers. So I keep a journal. You can't remember all of that. And if you are a very sophisticated person, you want to put it in a CRM system, even better.
So Antoinette, this might be a separate journal than the guest book, because you don't necessarily want to put out all the information and notes that you're taking on somebody. So the guest book might just be something to get the email addresses. And frankly, more and more, I'm asking people if they'd rather get a text or an email, because people under 25 or 28, whatever that number is, would rather get a text. And if they're getting an email, they may never see it. So weather, the photo on this one is from the Ann Arbor Art Fair right after a major storm. Fortunately, all those artists were there and were warned about the storm, so they were able to protect their art. You don't see a bunch of art flying around there. You just see a bunch of tents that got a little bit beat up. Now, weather happens overnight too. So even if the forecast is for clear skies, no wind, you still want to securely close up your booth. You put as much possible in the center, and you take off anything that's right at the walls. Why? Because if the wind blows, the walls move. If the drunk goes by and falls into your tent, the walls move. So you do want to make sure that your stuff is secured towards the center. Leave your legs, your weights on. Many tents, especially the easy ups, you can lower the legs, and it's better for wind resistance with the lower legs. It's much less likely that your tent is going to blow. Most artists don't take their art with them at night. Now, jewelers, yeah, they're going to take their most valuable, smallest stuff. If you know there's a storm likely overnight, you might want to take more of your stuff along. And that's kind of a hint. Look at what other people are doing. If everybody seems to be taking their art, there might be a reason for that. So maybe that is a spot that it isn't so safe to leave art out. Think about emergencies. The show is going to want to warn you when the weather is bad. The show is going to want to tell you where to go shelter. But guess what's going to happen? They're going to miss it. They're not going to see the weather before you do. Or they have 3 people to notify 1,000 people that there's a storm coming and you're at the end. Doesn't work. You got to keep your own eye on the weather and you have to figure out where you're going to go. This is a key for any place you go. Where are you going to go if there's a storm? Are all the stores closed? Must be something that's open. Decide that before you need to know, because your life is much more important than anything else that's at that art fair. I see a lot of artists holding down their tents. That might be okay on occasion, but sometimes that's not a good idea. At some point, if that tent's starting to get away from you, you should get away from it. And then departure is similar to getting there in reverse. Pack everything up so it's ready to load, then get the vehicle. If you have multiple vehicles, bring one at a time. Be nice. And this is a top secret that I know as a show producer that most artists don't realize. The last person to leave the show is often within an hour to 90 minutes of the person that almost had a heart attack because they had to be in first and get home. Once those people that are just completely unable to hold themselves back are out of the way, there's usually room for every vehicle to come in and park next to their booth and move along. So try to be patient. You'll live longer. Anybody want to add to this or have questions on this stuff?
Hey, Mark,
Yeah.
when I've done a show, you know, I'm a longtime artist, almost 35 years doing art fairs. I have found many years ago for an asphalt, I use a big screw, and I have like a washer, and I drill into the asphalt. That keeps my tent from walking. And then, because asphalt will heat up after somebody goes, oh, you're making a hole. But I says, once you leave, the hole is gone. You know, then it heats up, and it really helps your tent from walking, along with my weights.
Yep.
It's a long time ago at Plymouth Art in the Park.
So here's the disclaimer that goes with that.
Okay, what do you know?
Every show in every city has a rule against drilling holes in the asphalt or the cement.
I never do cement, but I didn't know
I know.
about the asphalt.
So cement does not self-heal the way asphalt does.
No, I never did cement.
And it might be a good idea to do that. And it might be a good idea to make sure people like me don't see you doing that.
Okay,
Because if I see you doing that, that puts the obligation on me to stop you.
okay, I didn't know that. Thanks for
Yep.
letting me know. I didn't know that, really.
But seriously, until 20 years ago, the idea of putting up a tent without staking it was outrageous. Nobody would have done it.
Right.
Even in the city streets, they were staking in sidewalks and in asphalt. And then something happened 20 years ago where people started to think weights. And frankly and honestly, weights are not a good substitute. A middle-sized stake is worth 2,000 pounds of weight on each corner.
So Mark, just to add some comments to weather is, you know, the art fair doesn't close if it's raining in most cases. So you want to think about if you do have side panels, how that's, you know, how can you use those to keep the weather off, an awning, keeping the rain from puddling onto your tent, you know, with the simple broomstick or end of an umbrella. So I think you also need to be prepared for rain, not just torrential kind, but also the kind that honestly people will still shop in.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I find sometimes that you'll do just as well in the rain. Why? Because the people that are coming out in the rain are the people who are serious about it. The people who are just out there for a good time are out of the way, so the people who are serious can get into your booth and shop. Kelly, I think we should emphasize one of the things you said about the puddling on the roof. Professional art fair tents are sloped in such a way that they'll never puddle. If you buy a easy up or similar type of canopy, even if you pull it really tight, eventually it'll start to puddle. And what that'll mean is that in one of the corners, more and more rain will be coming and it'll start to sink down. As it sinks down, there's more room for rain. Water weighs 8 pounds per foot. I've seen a tent with 10 gallons of water on it. That's 80 pounds, which the tent is not meant to hold. So what happens is the tent top just will collapse. So you want to make sure you're not letting it puddle, and you want to make sure when you put it up that you're putting it up in such a way that it's less likely to puddle. Pull down on your sides, make sure they're secure. Okay, if everybody's ready, we're going to move on to the Price is Right. Does anybody else have a question about show days before we move on? Or comments? Cool. So this is a small sample of our seminar on pricing. This is a full 2-hour seminar usually. So there's a lot more information here. Research the prices as you're thinking about setting them. If you're selling originals, make sure you're comparing prices to originals. Make sure you're comparing things that are similar, materials, size, complexity, and so forth, because an oil tends to be more valuable than a acrylic, for example, because the material is more difficult to handle and you'll get different effects. Okay, if you're a beginner, your work may not be as valuable as the woman who wins best of show every year for 25 years. So maybe your price shouldn't be at the same level as them. If you can't go to shows, there's some other places that you can look at to find price comparisons. Okay, consider the commission. Some of you are probably in galleries. In our area, the galleries charge somewhere between 30 and 50% of the price, which means if they're selling a piece of art for $100, you're getting between $70 and maybe as low as $50. So,
Mark, some of the galleries are now starting to take 60%.
oh my God, Gene.
I refuse to put my work in those.
It's a good idea. So your price is your price is your price was one thing that was brought up to me long ago. And the reason for that is if you're in an art fair and you're selling something for $100 and your New York gallery is at that fair, surprising because it's not in New York, but they're there because they're looking for new artists, and they see that the work that they're selling for $200 is priced $100, they may not say anything then, but you might find your art back on art shipped back to you before you get home. The gallery cannot compete with you, and you shouldn't set up a situation where they're going to have to compete with you. Whatever price you're selling in the gallery is the price that you want to be selling. And we're going to talk a little bit about discounting in such a little bit, but I would suggest you figure out what you're going to, if you're going to be in a gallery, say 40%, you need $100 on that piece, you better tag it up to 180 or so that you can pay your 40%. And then when you're at the art fair, 180 again. Okay, value of signatures and dates. Vicki Elmer with Mint Artists Guild, and coincidentally also my wife, did this research. The value of your art goes up 31%, or as much as 31%, because you have a signature on it. I always tell people to sign on the front. There's people that sign on the back. That's better than no signature. And then this is the part that surprised me. The date can raise the price by as much as 18%.
Later date or earlier date?
Just the date that you actually made the work.
Okay.
Because when you're more popular and you're more collectible, and they have a recent piece of yours, they might want to find an early piece and vice versa. So by dating your work, you're giving some more exclusivity to it. Any other comments on this part, or there's some more pricing stuff coming up?
Just a year sufficient.
Yeah, Daryl, a year is good enough. That's fine, and you can incorporate that into your name. You no longer have to use the circle with a C in it for copyright. Your work's automatically copyrighted now, but it doesn't hurt to do so. So your signature could be copyright Gene Lumen 1975 or whatever, you know, it all can be incorporated into one thing. Oh, and with prints, numbered and signed. There's a lot of people that will not buy a print that's not numbered and signed. Why? Because by numbering it and signing it, you're indicating that it's a limited quantity and there's more value to it. How large an edition? If it's your first one, you might want to start with 20. My wife just said 10. So you want to start small because selling out an edition is a great thing. And we can talk about editions later if you want. Okay, and then if you create art that's trendy, that can affect your price. My mother's paintings all featured nude orange people running through tropical rainforests. They sold very well in the 1970s. Not since, really. Okay, so discounting. This is an area that Kelly and I have different opinions on. I say, unless there's a great reason, don't do it. Kelly, you want to explain your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, there are just some people, and specifically, I'm going to say men more than women, that it's almost a power play or feel like a need that they're in charge of the transaction. And is it, so they'll always ask, well, you know, what's my good guy deal? Or do you, you know, can you give me a special price or something like that? Usually, depending on the person, and it's just a matter of practice, you'll know whether they're serious or not, or that's their shtick, right? And in many cases, I'll just say, well, the price that's on there is my best price. And that's most of the time I'll say that. But every once in a while, it'll be the wife just absolutely loves it. She wants to get it. I can tell it's more than they want to spend on art, right? Because some of my pieces are not cheap. And the man will say, you know, well, can you give me a discount? And based on that conversation, I said, you know, I can give you 10% off. And that's all that last little budge is all they needed to say yes. And honestly, 10% is not a lot. So, and they're not going to ask for a deeper discount. It's more of putting that man feels like he's in charge. You know, he's the man of the house. He's doing something nice for his wife. It's more of a cultural thing than anything. And it's just being able to read the client and read the customer and know what it is what is required to finalize the sale. But I would have to say more times than not, I'm not giving discounts. And more times I'm just saying that is my best price.
Thanks.
What if they buy more than one?
There you go. A good reason.
Yes, they'll say that, like, well, if I get 2 pieces, can I get a discount? And then I'll say 10%. I never give more than 10%.
Okay.
So absolutely. It like I said, 10% isn't that much when you add it up. So
Yeah, surprisingly too, people care about sales tax. So that's another way to go. Hey, if you pay in cash, I don't have to charge you the sales tax. I'm going to pay it to the state, of course, but I won't charge it to you because I don't have to pay a percentage to the credit card company.
yes.
And that's enough to get some people. About 10 years ago, there was a furniture store in town that was doing a different sale every weekend. It turned out that their best sales were the days that they said, we'll pay your sales tax for you.
Yeah.
That 6% was more to people than 20% off or whatever. Kind of bizarre.
I worked in retail for 30 years and I would have stuff that would come in from corporate that would be ugly. and they would mark, I had some Christmas ornaments come in that were marked at 25 cents each and they didn't sell. So I put them on sale for 3 for $1 and sold out of them in 2 days.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, they were paying more.
Mhm.
You had to override the register for every one of them. But
Yeah.
hey, they sold. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Would you
Yeah.
do that at an art fair on the last, hour of being there?
Just like I told you that some people come early because they think they're going to be able to get the best artwork. Some people will come late because they think they're going to get a discount. My preference, strong preference, and I believe that a lot of other artists feel this way, is we don't want to encourage that behavior.
Right.
If suddenly 20% of the people are waiting until the last minute to come to the show, that's going to really screw up your sales.
Yeah, I think I would never mass market a discount or a price. You want to protect your brand and establish yourself. When you start discounting, like publicly, right? Like 10% off this table, it basically says that product isn't worth the retail price because you have to discount it.
Yep.
So I would never discount anything publicly. I would never have a closeout sale. I would never have a last hour of the show sale.
Right.
It's always to help me close a deal based on, a very long conversation I have with a customer. And I just know that that's what it's going to take to get them to buy the piece.
Mhm.
So I actually agree with Mark. The discounts are not appropriate in an art fair at all.
They almost devalue the work.
Right?
Yes.
It's a different environment. Yep. So price tags. Some people put a price on the front. Some people have a separate tag next to their work. Other people only know the prices in their mind or have a list and believe they want to make the customer ask about the prices. All of those have advantages. You have to decide what works best for you. And then, the nice thing about having people ask is you get to see how they respond when you reveal the price. So you can get a feel for whether this is something within their budget. But you can tell that when they're looking at the work too. I have a great friend artist that had this huge 6 foot by 6 foot pieces in the center of his booth. And he had it for years and it never sold. And then I saw him one day and it was missing. I said, "Hey, that's beautiful. Your piece sold." He says, "No, it's terrible. Now I'm going to have to make another one like that and it's a pain in the neck." Well, what do you mean? Well, that's what gets them into my booth. They see that, they look at the price, they have a heart attack, but then those little pieces look like they're a great value, so they buy one. So you figure out your shtick.
That's interesting.
And then don't forget when you're pricing the value of your materials, the equipment you had to do, the rent you have to pay, and your time, though your time should not be part of the price negotiation. So I have a ridiculous statement at the bottom. You lose more sales at a great show than you do at a slow show. And what I mean by that is at a slow show, you're there and you can make every sale that's out there to be made. At a busy show, you're going to have people walking by your booth and not stopping because you don't have enough inventory or because you're selling and too busy or whatever. So capitalize on those slow shows and make every dollar you can. When you get the busy shows, prepare more for the next year there because you know you need to be ready. Okay, we're all salespeople. We'd rather be order takers. We'd rather somebody come in, say they love the piece, they put the credit card on the counter, and they walk off with it. And some of your customers will be like that. But you're not going to make a living doing that, or you're likely not to. So study sales a little bit. I put some quotes in there and some people to look at. Zig Ziglar was a great one. The quote, I paraphrased a quote in here for you, and it's in the extra material, but basically, I decided long ago that I'd rather put the extra time and effort into making a really beautiful painting rather than rushing through it so I could sell it at a lower price and be embarrassed for the rest of my life at that piece. You're basically establishing why your price is that. And, you know, most people don't want a $10 painting or they'd be at Target. So it's justify your price because you're worth it. Whatever your price is, you're worth it. People make purchases because it fulfills a need. You can't figure out what that need is until you listen to them. If they ask you, hey, do you think this would go with the blue sofa? It's very clear what they're looking for. And you can be honest with that. So people want to feel special. One of a kind, limited edition, handmade. This is another statement that I'd like to use. Fewer than 100 people a year across the country can buy one of my originals. You're in pretty exclusive territory when you buy one. You know you made the right choice when you see your friends admiring that piece. Here's another hint. Offer to bring things by so they can see it in place and even install it or deliver it. I'm told that people generally buy multiple if you take the trouble to drop in with some work.
That is true, Mark.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That is true. I have, when I offer my heavier pieces to deliver them, I usually leave there with a commission for another piece or sale of another piece.
Wow.
It's worth the time. It's worth the effort. You're creating that relationship.
So you also get a chance to see where your art is being placed in their home. And it helps build that relationship because you get to understand what their style is.
So this is one of the things that we do with the teen artists we work with. When we take them to an event, we put them in pairs and we ask them to support each other. Why is that? Because a lot of times people need a second opinion to close the sale. So if you have a second person in your booth who says, I agree, that one's special, that might close the deal. If there's another customer in the booth who looks like they're in a great mood, ask them whether they think it's a great deal or a great painting. And short of having another person, you can offer your own second opinion. Oh, lots of folks have been admiring that one. So you're justifying their love for your piece. Or if it's a print, you know, that's one of my most popular prints. Have you ever noticed when you're at the restaurant, whatever you order, the waitress always says, good choice? There's a reason for that. They're helping you feel great about the transaction. Okay, here's kind of the after the show, focusing on the future. There was some conversation in the chat about the guest book. Yes, keep track of your customer names and other details, as Kelly was saying. Keep track of the email addresses. Keep track of if they want to be find a text instead of an email. Keep supporting those people. This is one that I tell a lot of folks, and I believe it to be true. People shop art fairs because they're interested in your story, not just the art. If I want to buy art, I can go anywhere. But if I want to know your story, I'm going to get that at the art fair. You can do some of that on your website and some of that on your artist statement that goes to the gallery. But I think I can picture a lot of people saying, when their friend says, hey, that piece over there is really cool. Yes, I know the artist. She worked out at the Ann Arbor Art Fair. I saw her the first time she was there. She's back every year now. They're going to tell your story. Why? Because that's an important part of what they bought.
So Mark, that being said, it's good as an artist, especially new artists, that they have their, quote unquote elevator speech. So if someone asks them, oh, why are you an artist, or what got you into art? Like being able to say that succinctly, what motivates you and what differentiates you from the competition is help building that story. So a new artist should be prepared to answer that question and present themselves and start that storytelling.
Yes, and if you tell a self-depreciating joke, they will definitely remember the joke, and they might tell everybody the joke. They won't know where they heard it. They won't remember you. You have to appreciate yourself if you want people to appreciate you. So there's a lot of clues that they give you. If you notice somebody's come back to the booth for the third time, that means something. If you notice somebody's dressed really well, that may mean something. However, just because they're not dressed really well does not mean very much. One of the collectors that I know in Detroit, who's probably one of the biggest collectors in the city, you would never guess that he had the money to buy a photograph of a piece of art, let alone a $10,000 piece. Why? Because it's not important to him to dress. It's important to him to have great art. If you're not ready for him and if you don't treat him with respect, it's not going to happen. So photos. Especia, who was one of the Mint Artist Guild people, from the very beginning decided she was going to take a photo with the customer and the art. And often she'll send it to them as a reminder. Kelly, tell about
Yes.
in here.
So because I like to see where my art ends up. So when I complete the transaction and I'm handing the art to the customer, I will put a business card. I'll have the business card in my hand and I'll allow them to see me put it in the bag. And I'll say my email address is on my business card. I'd really appreciate if you could take a picture and send it to me. I always say, I'd like to see my art in its new habitat. And it usually gets a little chuckle. And I let them know that I would like to share that on my website. And I'm going to say, I don't know, 1 out of 5 people will follow through on that. And it's nice to see, because it's always surprising. I see a piece of art and I imagine where it will be. And then it's always nice to see where it does end up. But it's also a great way to start a conversation with that person and start that relationship.
Yes.
So, and what's great about that is I now have their email address and I can add them to my newsletter and things like that.
Yep, and the newsletter is something that artists used to do more of, but it's useful. It's just some news about you and your work that goes out to them, letting them know where to find you, letting them know what new systems or new art you have. Just communicating with them and reminding them about you, but not too often. If you're only going to be in that town once a year, there's no need to send more than a couple or 3 throughout the year to remind them.
Hey, Mark, and there are so many templates now that are available that make writing a newsletter so easy and make it look so professional. So, SurveyMonkey is a great one. There's templates there for a basic newsletter, allows you to upload photos and copy and video and creates headlines. And then it allows you to upload an Excel spreadsheet or CVS with your contact information. And it also allows you to send a sample to yourself. So you can see how it formats on your phone. You can see how it formats on your computer. And so it's really easy to do now.
Yep, and imagine how Marta's going to feel when she looks at your newsletter and sees a picture of herself with her new piece of art right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or on your Facebook page or anywhere else you can share that. I'm sorry, go ahead, Gene.
Just make sure before you send a newsletter that you have their explicit consent to do so, because with the new email marketing laws that's gone into effect in the last couple of years, if you spam people and they decide to get nasty, they can take you to court and win.
Mhm.
So you need a consent to
You
show
just
a
have-
picture of them?
No, what I do is on my email sign up, I actually make them sign up on my website to get my newsletter. I don't just automatically add them. By them
Right.
going and signing up for the newsletter, that's their consent. If I just get somebody's email address and add it to my database and send them a newsletter, I don't have their consent. I don't know if they want it. And I did have an artist tell me that they were fined $10,000
Oh, my gosh.
sending an unsolicited newsletter.
Oh,
Marketing
no.
So the easiest way to do that is, like you said, get consent. In most websites, you can prompt that to gather newsletters. But for the woman who asked about the guest book, always put at the top of the page on the guest book, yes, I'd like to get more
Yeah.
information about your upcoming fairs and events. Sign below. And so the consent is right there on the guest book. So they know in big bold print, the reason they're giving you information and giving you an email address is because they expect to get an email from you.
And if you're using an email service, there will be an opt-out on the bottom of every page.
Yes.
Fired by law.
People can leave and not receive it anymore. Additionally, if too many people opt out, you'll be banned from that service because they're not going to trust that you're doing the right job of collecting names. And they also want you to have a reason that you're sending the newsletter. And my reason is I met you at a show and we talked about sending you information.
I think emailing somebody nowadays unsolicited is very personal, right? It used to not be, but I think people protect their emails now more than they do in the past. And so it's not good customer relationship management to spam. Always want to get permission first. And so that they have the expectation that they are indeed going to get communication from you. And it's always important to let them know how often they're going to get a communication from you. So it's like, thank you for signing up for my newsletter. I plan on sending this out quarterly, right? So it's just about transparency and establishing that relationship and expectations in that relationship. If you want to do more mass communications, then use an ad on Facebook or something like that. Which can be targeted by demographic and hobbies. So don't use email. Don't buy email lists.
I had an artist friend tell me that she tried to do the whole newsletter sign up thing in her booth and she lost it. She got it wet. So now what she does is she keeps the web browser on her iPad open to her email sign up page. And when somebody says, I want to be on your newsletter, she just hands them the iPad. They enter their email address, hit submit. And then after they give it back to her, she puts it back to the sign up page ready for the next person. And she said she's much happier because she has stopped losing sheets.
Yep, and it's easier to spell it if they spell it for you.
Yes.
So follow up. I don't see any reason why you can't send a thank you note or card or something to everybody who buys from you, unless you're selling $10 items, then maybe it's too much. But I bet you if I come to an art fair and I buy 7 things from 7 different people, I'm not going to get a single thank you note. But if I get one, wow, did that change that relationship? Special occasions. If somebody's buying for a special occasion, they're probably going to be buying for that special occasion next year about the same time. And you're probably going to be at that same art fair. So when you see them, you can remind them, if you remember. So this is some of the stuff that I'm going to include. This is the schedule of my shows, which of course is my sales piece. This is some information about insurance and where you can find more information. This is some of the stuff that you're going to be asked at the show that you need to be ready for. This is some other ideas about how to perform well. This is some more information about discounting, more information about salesmanship. And these are some other issues: shoplifting, returns, and damaged goods. Now, I'm not saying that you have to have one specific way of doing anything. You'll find your own way to do it. But all of that is useful stuff, and I'd love to send it to you. And that's the only bribe I'm going to do, is I want you to fill out the survey so I can have you, then I'll send it to you, because that way I have the information I need to do better next time.